Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creative Wednesdays for the uninitiated. My name is Nina Marie, and this is the series where I pull back the curtain on my creative process. I am so excited for today's episode. We are going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is set building. And I want to make a huge shout out / disclaimer / warning as we go through this video, which is this. I am a DIY kitchen sink type of gal, and set building for me has never really had a set formula, a set of supplies, or any real structure other than just pure imagination and creativity. So there are going to be some useful advice, some tips, and some tricks, but there's going to be an awful lot of things that are just kind of feel it out and see what works for you as well. So I want to make that disclaimer, but this is a topic that I am super passionate about. For some of you who know me, you know that I went to a college in Santa Barbara that was both a photography school and a film school. And all of my friends were film students. So whereas the fashion kids were spending most of the time with the fashion professors learning about fashion photography and all of that wonderful stuff and how to make sets for fashion and food and props, I was over hanging out with the writers and the filmmakers building props and making movie sets for their featured films. And I finally had the courage to make my own feature film this past month, and I am so nervous. I haven't even opened the videos to see how I want to edit it and put it all together, and we'll get there, and I'm so excited to share, but I'm so excited, and we're just gonna dive in and talk about set building today, and hopefully it'll be fun and informative. So the first thing that I do want to discuss before we dive into the actual making of and I start showing you some behind the scene footage, which is probably more interesting than listening to me talk and watching my pretty face, although you gotta admit I'm kind of cute, so is why we got to address why are we building a film set. A lot of people ask, why would you build a film set? What's the purpose? Well, the truth of the matter is the film sets that I have been on oftentimes were built because A, it was a school project, and B, there's just really not a lot that you can do by renting a location. You can get away with renting locations, but there is a huge amount of paperwork, insurance, legal fees, red tape, and the list goes on and on when it comes to shooting on location and doing certain things. Now, that's not to say a location is bad, but for some things, like if you're wanting to film a horror movie where you've got sludge literally slinking down the walls, you're gonna have a really hard time convincing somebody to let you install pipes to ooze sludge down existing walls in an actual structure that they might want to rent out for other things in addition to your movie. Or in my case, finding a natural space that was confined enough to fill with a fog machine that I could then bring lights to without having to traipse power over God and all creation was just a little bit of a bigger challenge than I wanted to try and tackle. So I opted to build a spooky forest in my carport because no traipsing power cables. It was an easy space for me to block down so that I could fill up with fog and smoke to create the effects that I wanted, and it provided a little bit of an ease of use. It was easy to get to, and honestly, it gave me peace of mind knowing that if something went wrong, I was home and I could just chill out and not have to worry about driving home in the dark. So when deciding to build a film set, these are things to consider. Consider time of day, consider location, consider how long you're going to be there. You might find that you're shooting this one scene that's going to take an hour and you're shooting at a time of day that the sun's going to be changing. If you're shooting at sunset, that's hard to do on location because you only got 30 minutes. So all of these things are things to consider. But once you've made that decision, that's when the fun begins. And I I know I said my process is very loosey-goosey, but there is one solid step one that we have to address. It is the elephant in the room. Going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, sets don't have to be perfect. There's a reason for that. The reason comes down to lighting, angles, and depth of field. So before you build your film set, ask yourself, what are my angles? How am I going to light it? And what is my depth of field? Because all of those things change everything. I'm going to cut to a little bit of a behind the scenes here shortly, where you actually get to see me start building platforms with my stepdad Danny, and he's helping me figure out the power tools and how to make these stands to hold the trees. And you'll notice that from the angle in which the behind the scenes camera is shooting, it doesn't look very well. But you'll notice several times during that clip, I walk straight back from the set. And that's because I knew my main angle was going to be straight on, low, shooting this way, so that I had all of these trees up and above, framing the top of my model, and I wasn't really getting a whole lot of sides, and I wasn't really getting a whole lot of bottoms. So when I built my set, I knew that my big angle was from that direction, and so I built the set to look good from that angle. Didn't have to look good from the side, didn't have to look good from above, and it didn't have to look good from the middle or from 3/4. It just had to look good from straight on, because I knew my main shot was straight on. I also knew it didn't have to look perfectly, beautifully depthed and full of shadows and depth, because I was filling the space with fog. So you weren't really going to get a lot of depth anyways. And I also knew I was shooting at 2.8, which meant I wasn't going to get a lot of detail in my background anyways. So, and I don't know that you'll be able to see it, so I basically did this. And if it looked good without my glasses on, I went for it, because I knew it was going to be blurry. So that is the first thing you have to do before building a set, is you have to decide all of this. You can't just build a set and then decide the angles you want to shoot at and decide what f-stop you're going to shoot at, because all of those things play a crucial part in how you're going to set up that set. Do you need to make space for a dolly running down the middle, because you're going to need to jerry-rig a rig that can hold a skateboard while you have someone pull you on a rope and pull you slowly backwards? You got to account for that in your set building. So step one, figure out what angles, how you're filming it, what do you need to have space for before you build the set. And step two is gather your materials, which brings me to the part where we can actually cut away from my pretty face so you guys get to see some fun things. So for my set, I knew I needed a lot of foliage branches, so I had to go on a bit of a secret mission. And for those of you interested in building a forest set, you've really got two different options for how you can find your trees and foliage, and one is to just go foraging. I would caution against foresting, or foraging, not foresting. Foraging in places like national forests or places that people are there for security reasons and don't really want you touching their plants. They tend to get really mad when you start picking up branches and leaves and things. But if you're in an area where you know there's going to be a lot of down branches, you know there's all these broken branches on the side of the road, or a bunch of dead trees that are basically just collecting dust in piles, go grab those materials. And you're gonna need a pickup truck. I'm gonna give you a huge tip if you are going on a secret mission to forage for plants. Pro tip, if you are foraging and collecting green waste of any kind, wear proper attire. And by proper attire, I mean gloves, tennis shoes, long sleeve shirts, jeans, and for the love of all things holy, go out with someone who has a truck or a vehicle designed for off-road things like hauling trees. Do not be a cute, bubbly artist who shows up to collect giant trees in a PT Cruiser, in a skirt, flip-flops, and a PT Cruiser. You will get covered in so many scratches and scars and bruises. Just trust me when I say that. And then you're going to make a second trip out to wherever it was that you were going to forage, because you're not going to have room in your PT Cruiser. But that is definitely step one. Alternatively, if you don't want to go foraging, I don't know why I keep saying foresting, you can call to places like your green waste, or I would actually recommend going directly to like tree trimmers or gardeners, people who have a business of cutting people's trees and grass and lawns, and end up with a whole bunch of green waste, because chances are they're going to have to go to a green waste facility and pay them to dump that waste. And if you're an artist, you can save them money by just saying, hey, I'll take your green waste. You don't have to pay to get rid of it. I'll take it. And again with the gloves and proper attire though, because some of that waste is very pokey and not very nice. And then once you have your organic materials for a forest, then the fun can really, really begin. I enlisted the help of my stepfather, Daniel, to help me operate power tools because, again, I'm not good at power tools. I'm the type of person who is not allowed to touch power tools because weird things happen when I do. Like I once tried to help screw in a pane of drywall, and somehow magically I missed the stud and went straight into the electrical wire without electrocuting myself, but I shorted out the entire house. Okay, so I'm not allowed to touch power tools, and you think I'm joking and making light of it? No. I have another story where I was operating a nail gun, and somebody who was outside around the corner ended up getting shot by me in the buttocks with a nail, despite the fact that they were outside and around the corner. I don't know how I did that. I wasn't even aiming for them. I just was trying to be helpful and put together this little shelf thing using a nail gun, and somehow I magically, I don't know. So I don't play with power tools if I can avoid it because weird things happen. So I had the wonderful privilege of having Danny help me build some tree stands where we literally just took some scrap lumber and we made these makeshift stands that would hold the trees, and we drilled holes in them so we could stick the trees in them that they would stand upright. And then you'll notice I'm just leaning trees here and there, leaning them against the backdrop, and I'm just really, the key part for building a forest is you want to add layers. You want to have a background, you want to have a middle ground, you want to have a foreground. You'll also notice I'm attaching branches to C-stands and things that move. The thing to keep in mind when building a forest is you want to be able to move your trees around, especially if you need to change your angle. Suddenly you realize, oh, I need a shot from a different angle, but I don't want it to look like I didn't move and she's not somewhere in an organic space. So what do? Oh, well, we'll just move a few C-stands around and now it looks like she's deeper in the forest. Or now I've moved a few things around and she looks like she's in a different part of the forest, even though all we did was change our angle, move a few C-stands. Things like that. Again, I'm able to do that because I'm shooting at a shallow depth of field. Key. If you want to do something, shoot shallow depth of field. Less detail in the set. Just saying. You'll also notice about halfway through, I had a moment where originally I wanted it to be a darkly lit scene, so I threw up a black background as I figured I didn't need any detail. But then I realized, because I was going to be adding a ton of smoke and a ton of smog, I really wanted the texture of a lighter color, so I went with the white, even though I knew it would kind of break that feeling of realism. But I also knew that by the time I added the shadows over the top and the fog and the smoke, it would be believable enough for what I was doing. And since it was more of a dreamscape forest, I was okay with that change. And that's kind of really it. I just played with it. I built some stands, I put some trees, I put a bunch of tarps down so that you could hide all of the little platforms that the trees are stuck in. And then I went out to my backyard and dug a hole and filled up some buckets with dirt and sprinkled that all over the ground, again using black and brown tarps because I wanted the dirt to kind of blend in, and I knew with the fog I didn't have to cover it completely. There is one tiny little thing that I would change in my set, and that is there's a white blanket, because I ran out of tarp, that's running right through the middle of my set. And at the time that I made that decision, I had counted on having a ground fogger that was going to fill the space with fog, which didn't end up happening. I'm still happy with what I got, but that would be my pro tip is when building a film set and filming a movie, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So try and build your set with that in mind. In my case, that would have meant having taken the time to go out and get an extra brown blanket and put it down instead of the white. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was not very specific and it was kind of just me talking you through what happened rather than a step-by-step tutorial like the beating heart one was. But I did want to let you guys know that I will be doing a follow-up to this video on this upcoming Wednesday, and I will be inviting you guys to watch me build a different set live so you guys can see the process in a little bit more detail and also in a more informal way. You guys can actually watch me do it versus me trying to tell you after the fact how I did something, which I think will be super fun. I'm going to, instead of building a forest, I'm going to be creating a wall. I'm going to be creating a little corner for my model to sit in, and I'm going to actually have that wall cracked, and I'll be building a space for my fog machine to sit through so that hopefully I can push fog in through the cracks and they will float up. And I just really want it to look like the corner of a room, and then the wall is gonna crack, and it's gonna be super fun. I'm super excited. I hope you guys will join me this upcoming Wednesday at 10 a.m. I am not sure if I'll be able to actually do the shoot that day, but I'm really hoping I can at least show you the set, and then I'll have a model come in either later that day or later on in the week, and we'll do the shoot, and then I'll show you the finished product. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of Creative Wednesday. I know this one was a little less DIY and a little less logical and more just me talking, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you guys next week as we go live on Instagram as I build a room.